exceptional contributions in the fields of finance, technology, and cultural preservation. He has an impressive array of qualifications like memberships of ICAI, ICWA, ICMA UK, PMP, CISA, SAP, and Microsoft Dynamics 365 certifications. He has worked with multinational corporations in India, Dubai, and Muscat, earning the trust of numerous enterprises as a reliable advisor. Apart from his professional achievements, he has passion for Indian history, culture, traditions, and performing arts. This passion is culminated in his landmark book, Shall We Dance? Sensing Visual Karanas, a PhD level exploration of Bharatanatyam. Mr. Ram's unique blend of expertise in technology and his dedication to cultural preservation has inspired him to explore innovative ways to connect traditions with modern science and technology. In summary, Ram Krishnamani is not just a highly accomplished professional in finance and technology, but also a passionate advocate for Indian culture. It is with great pleasure and pride we, the members of ICAI Muscat chapter, welcomes you, sir, to take us through your session.
May I request CA Anuradha to escort Mr. Ram Krishnamani to the stage and welcome him with a bouquet of flowers. Thank you, C. Anuradha. The stage is all yours, sir. We are looking forward eagerly to listen to your speech.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello. Okay. So, good afternoon all. Thanks for having me here. Again, Anu, thanks for escorting me here. We go back about 35 years, so I can take the liberty of talking. I have a few friends here. Sunita has one more. Caught up with Ashish, and we caught up when we went on to Marathi because there was an easier one for us to catch up with. We'll divide this into 1 minute about me, 30 minutes about the session, and then we want to open it up for Q&A if anyone wants to have any questions. And one of our friends, poor guys, I think driving with the book because I forgot that at home. That was my mistake. So in about 25 minutes, what I will do is I'll walk through a few of the concepts that I did, a few of the concepts that we have included. Can we dim this lights? while he's doing that. So this book is about almost 5 years of work. Took me some 7 years of traveling within India. I normally travel about 2,000 kilometers in India only to sculptures in monuments which are more than 1,000 years old. That's a given. So in Tamil Nadu alone, there are about 47,000 temple or monuments, whatever we call it, which basically would be classified as temples, going back to the rock cut temples as they were speaking. And the journey took me to I've done about 24 or 25 such monuments within Tamil Nadu, and then I traveled the length and breadth of India, covering right from the west to the east to the middle of the country to the north. The advantage of what we have been seeing is that these temples have very deep poetry in stone, and the whole advantage of trying to be in India and see the monuments is those poetries in stone are almost like talking to you. If you look at 5 specific temples within India, and one of it I must proudly say is in Maharashtra, in Satara. So in Satara, then if you go to Tanjore, there is the Brigadishwara temple, which is called as a big temple. Then there is one in Vruddhachalam, and these temples have what we call as those monuments which are representations of the karanas, which simply mean the 108 postures which has been done in the Bharatamuni's book on Natya Shastra, and those are literally frozen to just talk about what these postures mean. So I took about almost 8 months to cover the 108 of those karanas and devoted about 216 pages in the book. So we'll talk about the book for just about a minute. So the book is about a good 600 pages, 725 photographs, out of which 300 I clicked. I could turn professional photographer because of COVID, not doing anything outside. And the book has been, as we talk about 108,000 words, so it's rock solid, 40 primary research materials and 80 secondary research. This book has been recommended for primary reading as a reference for anyone who's doing MFA in Bharatanatyam or PhD in Bharatanatyam in Toronto in one of the university campuses. So that's all about the book. Nothing much here. So typically, I don't know if you guys can see, there are about 26 chapters in the book. I've taken 5 of the chapters, which is primarily what we're going to talk about today. And it's too light, you can't see it. So these are literally the chapters. Navrasas pretty much is the 9 different emotions that Bharatanatyam dancers go through, evoke and express when they are on stage. So I've just connected and linked it to what they would mean if in case you connect it to the auditing or the accounting concepts. I've taken about 75 of the accounting concepts, which is the latest and greatest from technology, from ICAI standards or US GAAP or IFRS, and then just reproduced it here. So we look at those. There is Tandavam, there is Dhwani, there is Bhuchari, so it's literally about 5 or 6 chapters. So if you look at what does the rasas do, each of them tells you an emotion, and what I've done is I've just tried to equate it. If you were to look at doing it in a perfect enterprise, Shringara is you basically have a beautifully decorated dancer and stuff. If you do that, it's not window dressing your book, but it is literally having an enterprise which will have a very clear legal entity defined, chart of accounts are defined, business processes are defined. You have a fabulous ERP which basically works with that. Multiple systems which are integrated, whether it is payroll, whether it is related to your sales, related to your inventory, are all connected to that. It then gives you workflow, security, so all of everything is done. Business rules, close, analysis. But this is utopia. Normally you don't have situations like this. Otherwise, chartered accountants, system integrators will not be in demand all over the time. The second rasa would be what I have defined and just talked about. So this is something that you need to have some ethical standards and all of those which go with it. I would think if you look at what these represent, all of these are primarily ethical standards as to how we run enterprises. The way these rasas are supposed to come through is that they represent a different state that the dancer can express. But if you apply it from an accounting or an audit or a finance background, you will find that these concepts will take a lot of class. Rautra is one I want to basically pause for a minute. Anyone can think of what could anger in a corporate environment mean? Any takers? If you have somebody who's been just thrown out of a job, and if he becomes a whistleblower for some ethical standards which are not maintained, that could be one such. And what we have done is, there is a concept where employees with emotional intelligence, now in fact sensitivities are being done. There is a lot of workplace audit which happens for the way we have social behaviors. In fact, in the US, we are much more delicate when we deal with people in situations, people in office environments and stuff. So I don't know if you are aware that if I were to interview somebody in the US, I cannot ask their sex. I cannot ask their age. It's that sensitive. So the idea is basically to say that if in case you go beyond those moral standards or ethical standards, then this could be an emotion that you can see in the workplace. So again, if you have seen a movie which came in a few years ago, where there was some fracking which was happening as an event in one of those communities, and they found that it was actually spoiling the water table and the whole soil conservation went through. And then there is an investor activism which happens and causes the company to close down. An equivalent could have been of the nanotechnology, car which was possibly going to find its home in West Bengal, and then the whole investor activism, there is a different type of activism which came up. But just those are some of the things. This Veera is something I want to spend some time to say. So if you look at companies which are operating in Australia, Adani has one of the largest investments in ports and coal. So around the 90s, after the opening up of the Indian economy, we found that a lot of investors could take their dreams outside. And then if you look at Reliance, obviously they do everything population scale. So Veera is primarily that particular rasa, which actually means you are brave enough to take on the world. As we talk, obviously, every enterprise which starts in India goes foreign shores very quickly. We have our own solar related farms. So I think there is one solar farm which is being constructed or in various phases of it, which starts from Gujarat, goes into Rajasthan. It's supposed to be an 800 kilometer by 10 kilometers. The whole place is supposed to be a solar. And if you look at India's status of Veera, suddenly there is a muscle that has come up from 2014 for the leadership and the way we have represented our country. We had our whole particular energy related completion was to be done by 2030. And I think we are already finished our green energy requirements by 2022. So that's the kind of things which would give you Veera. There's a few more which I have said. That's on Veera. This is a very interesting one. So anything which is Bhayanaka is basically fear. Hostile takeovers, employee retrenchment, all of this will give this emotion out very clearly. And then the point is when a project is going live and then suddenly you found that the data was not transferred from the vendors or the product masters, you will find that there's going to be a crisis communication, and that's going to be a state of real chaos. So those could be from a technology perspective when you do. The KYC norms which have been introduced in India for all the asset management companies, as a retail investor, you will find that the KYC norms have been changed multiple times in the last 5 months. As an investor myself, I've gone through this. So that could be the type of situation that you can deal with. Nationalization was there. This was a 1967 phenomenon where all the Indian banks were nationalized. That could be one scenario you can think of. So the corporate related part of how it works. So the financial markets, so there was additional economic standards which was issued in China. So if you were doing an implementation of a project, and if it was an ERP, let's say for example you are doing an SAP or a Dynamic 365 implementation, China has additional requirements that your data has to be held in servers within the same country. So then there were some debates. We were doing a couple of projects in China, and then we had to get some legal advice whether Microsoft Windows, because when you're on a cloud-based server, the cloud hosting is going to be in any one location and you can do, except that there will be enterprise requirements where you do government cloud or a defense-related sector cloud, those kind of things. But those could be one where you can have a situation for decision making. The investor behavior. We all saw the story of what happened to the Indian investors' confidence, which is being pulled in by the Hindenburg-related part. So that could be one for Bionic. Disgust. This could be, actually the disgust part is a hostile takeover part. So if you look at the US, when PeopleSoft as an HR solution was taken over by Oracle, it was okay. But then what they went on to do further is Oracle wanted to acquire every competitor that was out there in the market. At one point in time in 94 or 95, they were trying to take over SAP. But then the German government came down very heavily and said, SAP is a part of national pride, so it will not be sold. So that is the level of disgust if you look at for the part of the person. So I just wanted to give you some flavor of what these particular things. Adbhuta. In fact, the last point on the Adbhuta, I wanted to inject some amount of humor in what we do. So you can basically think about the art of wonder. Some of the biggest wonders were the digital payments in India, the number of startups in India. And what we have seen is Prime Minister Modi in the last 4 years, with every foreign dignitary who has come into India, he has introduced him and taken him to a different historical place. And for example, when the French president came, he was in Rajasthan and he was basically buying something from the roadside and he actually paid with his Beam app. So the ability for us to basically talk with pride. So Singapore basically accepts rupees. There is a lot of countries where basically rupees now, I mean, that's a state of situation. Oh wow, is it possible? That's a kind of, that kind of response. So anything which you basically think of new products, Adbhuta could be ChatGPT. In India, pretty much every student in school knows how to use ChatGPT for their homework. The question obviously is, if you use ChatGPT, do you know the answer to counter check where it is right or wrong? So that's a knowledge base out of it. So Adbhuta is one such thing. Actually, the ninth one called Shanti, which is peace, was never in the first list of things. First list of things that was there for the, this is the monster. So we come out. So the part which basically was Shanti was the ninth rasa. The Natya Shastra, which if you read in the original or the translations by Manmohan Ghosh, you will find that the ninth one is not mentioned. This is added a bit later on, more around the 15th century. This is, life is good. So that's the LG logo. So we're talking about a scenario where you basically start a new company. So actually for starting new enterprises today, if you look at a situation, there is a lot of startups available. So for example, in a lot of countries, you can start up a company. In US, you can set up a company in about 20 minutes. There are organizations which tell you that you can start an ERP. We will do your back office accounting. We'll do your payroll processing. We'll do your order logistics using something like a 3PL logistics. We'll do the billing of the customer. Think about a scenario for starting a business and be literally on the ball in about 2 days. That's peace. So that's what pretty much comes up in terms of the part of peace. So again, this is all the parts of responsible investing in a market. There is ethical components of how you invest. There are ESG related parts which come in. So a lot of the new related parts which are there. Now, those were the 9 rasas that we spoke. The one which really takes the cake is, if you have any of you all traveled to Geneva, there is the Institute of Particle Physics at CERN. Anyone heard of the God particle? There's one hand, 2. So, if you go to CERN in Geneva, there is a 6-foot tall Nataraja that was donated by the BARC in 2008. Now the question was, what does Nataraja do in Geneva? That too in the Institute of Particle Physics, where they were doing the Higgs boson particle, which is God particle as they found. And so I have an American passport now, so July 4th is the Independence Day. God particle was found on July 4th, 2012, just by coincidence. The God particle was basically spoken about by one of the Austrian physicists. He writes a book on the Tao of physics. And he says, Ananda Tandavam. So there are 2 points that we are talking about. One is called the Rudra Tandavam, which is from chaos, from creation, from chaos to creation. Rudra Tandavam is the point where you started, so the Big Bang theory goes back with a 4.2 billion, 14.2 billion years, but now with the new Webb telescope, it's possibly pushed back by maybe a few more billion years. Now it's the more we know that we don't know enough. So from creation to the first possibility of creation was the piece what this call as Rudra Tandavam. And when it settled, for there was a possibility of creation for the first instance of life form to evolve. So if any of you have seen the Dashavatars, right? The 10 avatars as we talk is nothing but an evolution of life. First, life was in water. Then it goes into an amphibian, then goes to a reptile. From a reptile comes to a land. Then it goes into the Neanderthals. I'm giving you the logical part, which we would talk in different names of the gods that we use. This is the point before the first creation is possible. If you apply to today's modern day world, what can be chaos? Think about a startup. You're the manager, you're the damager, you're the peon, you're basically the cashier, you're the accountant, everything. That's the story of how chaos is. Or if you basically grow at a point in time where demand outstrips supply, you need to have an ability to match supply. That is the point in which where you had decisions of make or buy. So factories, outsourcing capabilities, if you basically have a demand requirement of say 100, and if your own manufacturing locations do not cater to more than 40, now the 60 is either a lost sale, or you look for capacity outsourcing from companies which do not use the same level. So that could be one case where we spoke about market skills. 60% of the total jobs that we have today in the market did not exist 30 years back. That is going to be the same story as we talk. Just to give you some insights, how many of you have used Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations for your ERP in any of your customers? One. Anyone else? One more there. So the good news is, by the end of 2025, Microsoft, so the Copilot for Finance was released, Copilot for Supply Chain, Copilot for Sales is released. They are releasing 20,000 use cases for use across 26 industries. What that means is the person who is today configuring a Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations functional consultant, his job will not exist another 5 years from now. But it will be replaced by somebody who's doing a Power Apps or is using basically the digital studio for doing the whole part of Copilot for Finance. So Copilot Studio, so what we have done is we have developed for a customer, the office of the CXO. Using natural language, you can talk to the system and say, give me the last 10 customers who defaulted on the payment despite having a very high sale. The information which is thrown out is in pie chart, whatever you want to use, it can be pushed out to click, it can be used from Power BI, all of those. All those jobs are going to go. Point here is, change is going to be continuous. So that's what that part is. Continuous learning, you've got multiple platforms which gives you education, those are things which come up. Continuous learning, CPE, what you are doing here. These CPA courses will be completely changed, revolutionize the way things are. There is one more piece. So when one of our daughters, she's a gynac and she works in Brooklyn. She went to a university which is a teaching university and a hospital in Baltimore University. So when I was asking her, where is the location of it? She said, Dad, any hospital which was in teaching 200 years back was very close to a cemetery. Bodies vanish. They are the ones on which you do testing. The future of medicine is hologram. How many of you all have the new Vision Pro which Apple has come up with? Have you all seen that in action? So the Apple Vision Pro is going to be used very highly in the hospitals to demonstrate 3D view of how surgeries can be performed. And there was one company which actually went bust from Orlando. They came up with gloves for feeling the objects in 3D. So there is three types of this, right? There is AR, there is VR, there is MR. So the concept of this level of technology, that job doesn't even exist today. That's going to be chaos. So those are some of the parts. ChatGPT we spoke about. ChatGPT is one of the most, everyone today when you talk to, they'll say, AI, ML, we are working on it. You ask them, what are you using it for? Nobody knows. Or, there is a new technology, and I don't know, I'm sure you guys must have heard of it. There is a new course available, it's called prompt engineering. How many of you are familiar? It's a common one. Prompt engineering is nothing but how do you ask ChatGPT to return the values that you want? Because it can deliver what you want. But how do you use it is prompt engineering. That's all going to be a part of the Rudra Tandavam, which is chaos. Now, let's talk bliss. Ananda Tandavam. So the Nataraja, if you have seen the posture, it's of the Nataraja standing with a balance on one leg, and he's got his other leg on the dwarf demon, which is called Moelaka, Lepus, all the descriptions from the Western and Eastern Vedic astrologers or the astronomy that you can think of. The part which is very clearly related to that is when you're looking at any financial management which is based on ethics. So I work for this company called Protivity Consulting. They are in Muscat as well. Anyone heard of Protivity? Oh wow, not bad. So we are among the top 100 companies to work for the last 16 years in a row. Every employee who comes in, normally the attrition has been very close to 2% in the US. In 2008, they had to do away with, I think, 3% or 4%. That's the level of part. So in 2020, interestingly, not a single employee was let go. And the revenue of the company doubled from 1 billion to 2 billion. So they did a 100% growth on it. So I'm just here to also talk about productivity. So the part is the financial management, the way the management related treats the customer, treat the employee, treat the vendors, all those would basically be covered in that. There is an employee satisfaction. I think every company today works on this, and they also do a customer satisfaction survey that they publish. Protivity works with about 75 to 100 CFOs every year to talk about the leading trends, what they do, and they share it with everyone. I'm sure you all are doing it as well. There's a lot of Big Four that you all get to that you do similar things for your customer. The last word is the resilience to make the systems that are adaptable. Am I going fast? Am I going slow? Okay. So the colors which I've chosen, and it's not visible as much. So the first color, which is Dhwani, is actually dark red. The second one is a lighter version of that. The third one is a green, and the fourth one is a blue. There is a color combinations which are at play when you do the Dhwani Swara. So let's talk about what does Dhwani Swara Tala mean from a Bharatanatyam perspective. If you look at dance, music is an essential accompaniment for it. For music, if you look at where does it come from, you will find that man found his inspiration for music from birds and animals. That is the primary part. As we learned, they went on to do something more. They tried to codify what they learned from nature. Any of you in this group are familiar about one yajna which happens in Kerala in a place called Alvai, and it's called the Athirata Yajna. Anyone heard of it? There you go. So Athirata Yajna is held every 12 years, and the last one was in 2008. What they do is that the Nambudiri Brahmins, they basically erect a full pandal, and those pandals normally will go with coconut trees and the palms which are used. There would be hundreds of them. They would stay inside the pandal for 10 days. There are chants that they do. Those chants, you cannot write them. They are illegible. Sorry, it is not possible for you to write what they are chanting. They chant only the sounds of birds and animals. And on the 10th day, after they come out of it, they basically set the whole pandal to fire. And there's a reason for it, and there's a big science around it. Then they codified what they learned. And then when it comes to giving you a simple parlance of what sound is used for, that's the Dhwani part, is sound has multiple characteristics. So the multiple characteristics could be something like volume, diction, tonality, meter, rhythm, laya, raga, swara, tala, natvana. And then it connects to dance. Why is it relevant for us here? So if you are looking at, I come from a finance background like all of us here. So if you set the tone for a new organization and say, hey, we want to do something, but before that we want to plan, and we will do budgets, and we will first plan for them, and then we'll do actuals. You need to communicate. That's your first step. Then you basically do your strategic part of whatever you do for your planning. Then you identify at what points in time you will basically evaluate. And once you do the evaluation, how will you basically do the goal alignment? You've got some parts which will go towards, if you get to a new product for doing your financial planning, and then if you do it on a monthly basis, there is going to be a learning curve that you have. Once you flatten out the learning curve, it literally reaches the part of talam, because then you're in sync. At that point of time, when these three comes together, then it works like a charm. That's a combination of those three which becomes a harmony. And that would be your, if you look at any ERP, they would tell you buy, stock, make, sell, record, report, analyze. Finance is always down in the value chain ERP system. But it still takes a lot of precision, because if you do that part right, then the flow is right, because then you're looking for any ERP to have the single source of truth. So that's a single source of truth. I've written a full chapter on that. I don't want to read out what's there, but I just thought you should get to see what these flavors are. Pause for about 30 seconds. So that's the Dhwani Swara Talam part. Any questions here? Okay, we can reserve time towards the end. Now, if you learn dance, the dance basically has two types of movements. One is called Bucharis. Bucharis where both your legs are grounded. There are 16 of them. And that's the reason why they do it. Can we apply it in finance? So anything foundational can be called Bucharis. You're basically laying the foundation. You can be a startup, you can be a new company, you can do grounds up, almost everything that you do. Once you set this foundation, you can then move on to what the second part of the dance steps related ones, they're called Akashacharis. Akashacharis are when a leg is off the ground or when you jump or when they move, both the legs are off the ground. Let's see that. That is one such posture using Akashachari. So the right side is basically saying that if your foundation is set, then you're off to a great risk-taking capacity. Your whole ERP is in place. You can then start acquiring companies where you basically integrate master data. You can do one chart of accounts. You can do your consolidation. You can do your eliminations. You can report to the street whether you're doing your IFRS, GAAP, and if you're doing lease accounting, you can move on to things like, you can do, so lease accounting in US is slightly different from the rest of the world. They do the financial lease and the transactional lease part, but there are different ways. So there is an AC 840 and an AC 842 that comes into play. That's your IFRS. AC 606 corresponds to 15 and 16. Yeah, 16. So that's the part of it. What it basically does is, the Bucharis is foundational. Every dance student spends a lot of time doing their mental muscle memory stronger using those steps for dance, based on which the Akashacharis become a bit more easier. 16 Bucharis, 16 Akashacharis. There is a very complex subject which talks about the progression to Rasa Sutra. It took me about 8 months to write 22 pages. Phenomenal research, because I did not understand first time. When I spoke to about 4 different Bharatanatyam dancers, understood it, went back to Manmohan Ghosh, found that. And I said, if this is so complicated, what is the modern day accounting looking like? I'm literally calling it abstract accounting because we develop a product where you can basically use an RPA, which voice-based RPAs are available now from Oracle, from SAP, and from this. So this is the kind of growth you're going to see. ESG, anyone from your consulting who's there in ESG from this group? Yeah. So ESG is a new area of work which didn't exist 20 years back. That is the kind of new things that we are seeing. The mobile accounting solutions is you can leverage, there are new products which were launched about 2 weeks back. They are saying you can use the accounting part of it, billing part of it on the fly. That's your part. Big data, everyone talks. So, how many years we have been hearing about big data? Going back to eternity. So, big data, when I started working on it in 2010, I went in and we were told, the definitions of big data, that it has got velocity, vector, volume, all the areas, so the 5 V's and stuff. There is no successful big data based reporting even today. 2 companies which use big data big time is Facebook and Google. They are using it, using R programming. R language is the big base for big data. Cybersecurity is a big ticket item for every organization. In fact, what we found is if you use generative AI based security, the cyber security related norms for that is big time. What does that do for chartered accountants? Those who have extended to go into CISA might find this as a very, very big added thing. So I hope organizations are already taking, or even CISSP for that matter. VR and AR we spoke about. So VR and AR are used by Google Glass on the border security in the US, on the Mexican borders and in the northern borders, to mark out identified areas and generate those kind of things. That's a pieces that we are seeing in new technologies. Digital payments, I don't need to talk, we all know enough for it. ChatGPT, Copilot for Finance. Copilot for Finance is one area where Microsoft is betting very, very big. The Copilot for Finance works with any ERP, any industry solution. The good part they don't tell you is that there is a studio, which is the Copilot studio, which you can tell the system to see behavior, and then it will learn. And once it learns, your machine learning comes into play. Those are things we should leverage those for. Natural language processing, that's again another big ticket item from Copilot for Finance. So that's, I think, almost the last slide. Oh no, there's non-linear learning. This is the latest and greatest that we have seen. So if you see, after COVID, a lot of things changed. Work from home became a reality. The price of Zoom as a company shot up almost about 25 times in 6 months. Anyone who knew that this is the way it's going to go, so in Manhattan, in New York, a lot of real estate, commercial real estate was not working. So they found quickly that they either broke leases or they were trying to transfer commercial real estate into what they would call as apartments. But then they were struck down by the city council because they said there's other requirements that they need to take care of for hygiene and all the other stuff. If I do the non-linear accounting, generative AI modeling algorithms come into play, all of these have a very, very big place in it. Voice activated AI tools. This is literally the last slide. So what are we looking at next? So since I was continuing with my book on dance, I said it might be worthwhile to check if there is any Android app or iPhone app for learning dance. And I found that there was no iPhone app. There's one iPhone app, there is one person whom we know, she had done 4 DVDs, she has converted that to simple, whatever you could see in the DVDs is in the app. But that was not much. So we're developing an app which basically will serve us for anyone who wants to know about the art. This has got about 900 videos. And there are screens which don't, the movie doesn't last more than maybe a minute and a half. It's supposed to give a glimpse of what Bharatanatyam is. It's not completely connected with the book. But what I'm also doing is I'm working with about 5 Bharatanatyam schools. We are leveraging technology doing C2B. C2B is, if you're using the app when you're in Muscat, it will connect you to the nearest Bharatanatyam school. So it's an enrollment part. For me, this is completely for my love of technology and love of doing things for culture. So we will be ready with it. We're looking at November 15th. Hopefully we should do it on first day of Navratri. I can show you all, it's on my phone. It's a beta version which is there. So this is exactly what we think is going to be the future of learning. Anyone who's married looks at the phone before they look at their partner, when they get up or before going to sleep. So that's the rule, that's not going to change. Questions? Any questions? So, I just wanted to share with you all, this happens to be the book, and this book I'm going to leave back in Muscat with Anu, and this can be tried before you buy, because what we are doing is we're collecting, so I pledged about $75,000 from the sale of this book. We are pricing it at about 35 reals. As we talk, I don't have any other than this copy, but by end of June, we should have another 10. This is about 3 kilos, so it takes quite some time. So I bought about 18 copies. My first halt was Dubai. I didn't realize that I was not flying business from Dubai to Kuwait, so I paid $560 on excess baggage. Over to you, sir.
I would say that you have, it was a very interesting session. The way how you naturally connected the different aspects of Bharatanatyam to the accounting and finance. My question is, why did you choose Bharatanatyam? In India, we have different forms of classical dance.
So it's the 80-20 rule, right? So it's not even 80-20, it's 90-10. 90% of the forms of performing arts for dance happens to be there. And that being the rule, so there are 8 different dance forms, which is what is listed in chapter 2. And then chapter 25, I'm actually promoting, there is one dear friend of mine, she has come up with a combination between the Kerala martial arts called Kalari Payattu and Bharatanatyam, and it's called Kalba. So I'm working with her to see if we can connect to the Ministry of Culture in India because it's a 5-year program. Entrance, intermediate, and the final one. So the Bharatanatyam is an obvious answer. So when I was doing the launch in Toronto, I don't know if you guys would even believe if I tell you this. There are 300 Bharatanatyam schools in just one city called Toronto in Canada. One city. That is also in 4 different suburbs, that's it. Out of those 300, 260 are run by Sri Lankan Tamils. Their adoption to culture is at least 10 times more with what I would say, they do it for the art. The person who hosted me and basically opened up their heart, their studio, so it was a 50-seater studio, perfect. It was not as big as this, but very cozy, state-of-the-art stuff. She called in 12 Bharatanatyam gurus, each of them who run schools, and they don't have any competition. They collaborate brilliantly. The person who was the chief guest was a PhD in Bharatanatyam. She spoke for 25 minutes. There was 4 ensemble performances by 8 dancers. She blocked off her studio for 4 hours on a Sunday, which is peak time for them. Organized tea with biscuits, with samosa, had dinner, packs to go. She charged me nothing. Their ability to do culture, I wish we imbibed. When I did another launch in Atlanta, the dancer was supposed to do it in a party hall next to a restaurant which is owned by my friend. She said, "Ram, you won't dance because they serve non-veg." So Bharatanatyam seems to be the obvious answer.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you.
So what we can do is anyone who wants to take a look at the book, I'll leave it out and I can talk to them. But I think you've got your AGM going on. But I can leave my email ID. So whoever wants a book, please just send me a message. I will get that organized for you. Or if you can reach out to Anu or my dear friend who's sitting here, Sunita, either of them will be able to help you. Thank you so much.
We extend our sincere thanks to CA Ram Krishnamani for delivering such an engaging session. Your insights have been truly valuable. May I request our chairperson, CA Jim Joseph, to kindly felicitate Mr. Krishnamani.